Body shot. Oh, that hurt, didn't it?
When the adrenaline starts pumping and you know what you can do with this right hand, it's hard to not do that.
Here are your hosts, Derick G and AJ.
What's going on, folks? Welcome back to another episode of the Bloody Water Podcast. UFC 276 is upon us, and it's a big one. 2 title fights. We got the Last Stylebender, Israel Adesanya, looking to defend his middleweight championship against Jared Cannonier, the 38-year-old former heavyweight real threat, man. It's one of those names where you're like, he's fighting who? But I'll tell you, man, there's definitely some interest to be had here. But I think the real people's main event is Alexander Volkanovski versus Max Holloway, the trilogy. Volk, he stole the title from Holloway the first time, unanimous decision. Some would argue there's a little back and forth in the second fight. That's neither here nor there. We'll talk about that more in a moment. But this is the trilogy. This is for greatness right here. So clearly, folks, we have a lot to talk about. But you know I need to bring in my co-host, the New Mexico native, the Santa Fe bomber himself, AJ, brother. I just mentioned we have history on the line here. We have a making of who's going to be a GOAT versus who's going to be just another one of those former champions, brother. How hyped up are you right now? Is Israel Adesanya versus Cannonier, is that even the main event, or is that just the placeholder? What are we talking about?
I mean, I guess the big boys get the last curtain call, but I'm right there with you, Derick. I think this is the people's main event right here. Max Holloway, he even said it himself. There's going to be a lot of Hawaiian pride in the auditorium. They might not even stay for the last fight of the night. I'm sure they will. Everybody wants to see Izzy fight, but I'm with the blessed Hawaiian right there, man. That's the event I'm most excited for. What about you, Derick?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you, man. I think that Volkanovski versus Holloway is literally, when's the last time, aside from Daniel Cormier versus John Jones, where you had a rivalry that went back and forth with 2 people inside the top 10 pound for pound list? That's what makes it great, man, is that you literally have some of the best to do it right here. Volkanovski's on a 21 fight win streak. Holloway, yeah, you have a couple hiccups against Volk and whatnot, but at the end of the day, man, this is the dude who was the baddest man in the featherweight division next to Jose Aldo. So I'll leave that for what it's worth right now, but we have a lot of other fun fights to talk about, man. Literally a stacked, jacked, and loaded card right here, brother. So let's not forget. AJ, 79 and 39 on the year, brother. You were building up that lead little by little. 75 and 43 for me. I have some room to make up. This week will be the week. I sound like just a sad sports fan, right? This week, next year, it'll be your year, right? No, but I'm telling you, man, this is a game of short memories because every week does count ultimately. Folks, of course, I do want to let you know, drop a like, subscribe. We're almost at 400 subscribers here, AJ. When we hit that 400 mark, before we get going and all that, when we hit that 400 mark, man, how much of an accomplishment is that to you? Because I like to imagine it like this. In the grand scheme of things, with thousands of followers, no. But you have a solid base of people that are supporting you heavily. And if you imagine 400 people lined up behind you, brother, that is a lot of people. So I'm feeling it, my man. I'm hyped up. How do you feel?
Derick, when you put it into perspective like that, because 400, I mean, you said to yourself, that much support on its own is almost, it's unfathomable. Like when we started this, I would never thought, that, but it's always been in the back of my mind to keep growing and keep pushing. All these little steps, they say, the compound effect works. You do those little steps all the way, and then finally look back and you see all the people that are actually supporting you behind. Man, it makes a big difference. It really does. I would have never thought this was like a big step, a big milestone, but you put it like that, man, that's a small army behind you. That's a small army of the Bloody Water Podcast followers right there, man, and I love it. I appreciate it, and I don't even know. I can't really say much about it, man. I'm flabbergasted.
There we go. That's what we need right there, because I will tell you that much, man. The appreciation goes to show with our work ethic and our determination, right? But here's the big key. The small army of 400 people behind us, those are the people benefiting from the knowledge and from the picks, brother. Let everybody sleep, man. You know what I mean? By the time they wake up, it'll be too late. And I think that's what I have to say there. So without any further ado, it's time to really talk about this pay-per-view, UFC 276. And let's get into our money line TLDR bet recap sheet. Let's get it, brother. So we got 5 fights on the docket. And folks who don't know, Robbie Lawler versus Bryan Barberena is actually replacing Lauren Murphy versus Miesha Tate. That bout got canceled. Murphy, she ended up getting COVID or something like that. So good scrap, fun scrap. And we'll just run through the docket. So we have a matter of Ann Still versus Ann New, right? Israel Adesanya versus Jared Cannonier. Looks like across the board, we are rocking with the Last Stylebender. However, AJ, there is a little bit of indecision, I guess you could say, or going against the grain. I'm going with and still Alexander Volkanovski, man. You have 2 wins in the trilogy. The momentum is there, but I understand this is the people's main event, and you're going with Max Holloway right there, brother. We'll talk about it more in a second, but I want to know before we move on, how much, film did you watch to be like, oh, brother, I don't know, I gotta roll with the Blessed Express? What are we talking, brother?
Man, I always rolling with the Blessed Express, Derick. I didn't need to watch any film because I've been watching it for years.
That's
but
right.
But I did go back and watch, and we'll talk about this more later. I did go back and watch the 2 last fights, and I'm still on the side of the Blessed, man. I still think he won them both. Those judges, man, those judges can get the worst of you, or they can get the best of you, depending on which side of the coin you lay. But let's see, man. We'll talk a little bit more about it later.
Let's just say that's a side note, folks. We'll talk a lot more about that in a second. Now, Sean Strickland versus Alex Pereira. The next man they're trying to build up to fight Israel Adesanya for the championship. We're both rolling with Tarzan. Sean Strickland, man. Experience right there, I definitely think is going to play a factor. And listen, this is definitely a big step up in competition. The last man that Alex Pereira defeated was Bruno Silva, man. So going from Bruno Silva to the number 4 ranked Sean Strickland, big jump. Now we got a classic matchup in Bryan Barberena, Bam Bam Barberena versus Robbie Ruthless Lawler. And it looks like you're rolling with the OG, Robbie Lawler, man, whose last win was over Nick Diaz. Shout out to him. I think I got Bam Bam on this one, man. We'll go there. And then, of course, I think it needs to go without saying, the Suga Show, Sean O'Malley versus Pedro Munhoz. Big step up in competition, but it looks like we're rolling with the Suga Show. So, AJ, ultimately right here, this is what it comes down to. The locks of the nights, Israel Adesanya, Sean Strickland, and Sean O'Malley, right? Now, we got a little contention right there. You got Holloway, I got Volkanovski, you got Lawler, I got Barberena. But basically, those are your 3 locks, folks. So, tune in, stick around for your programming to understand why we're going to pick who we pick and the prop bets that we're going to go over. But in the meantime, if you want to go run to your local sports book while the picks are hot, you got them, folks. You know what time it is. Once again, drop a like, subscribe, hit us up on Instagram at Bloody Water Podcast, on Twitter at Bloody Water Pod, and on TikTok at Bloody Water Podcast. Look at us with the Gen Z folks. All right, man. AJ, brother, we have a lot of fun fights to talk about, but we also got some good sleepers, brother. So let's kick it off. Let's get into it.
It's time for some fight night.
And if you ain't paying attention, you're gonna sleep on me and I'm gonna wake you up.
Okay, brother. So there's a lot of fights to choose from. I'm talking about the likes of Uriah Hall, Andre Muniz, Ian Garry versus Gabe Green. I know Gabe Green is your boy. You've talked about him as a sleeper. You got Cowboy versus Jim Miller, the rematch. You know what I mean? Brad Riddell, Jalin Turner. But then you also got a couple of names on here that aren't as popular that are going to be some bangers, brother. So talk to me, my man. Who is your sleeper for UFC Vegas 276, my man?
Honestly, Derick, this week was a little hard to choose, man. There's so many different fighters on this card that we've already talked about. You said it, man. The Ian Garrys, the Gabe Greens, the Brad Tavares, the Dricus du Plessis, the Andre Munizes. There's all kinds of them that we've already covered, man. So it was a little difficult to find something intriguing for the sleeper. But what did it for me, man, was a Jessica Rose Clark versus Julija Stoliarenko fight that's going to happen, man. First fight of the night, kicking off the early prelims. This one's going to be on ABC, folks, and ESPN, so tune in. It's going to be a crazy one, man. Jessica Rose Clark, she's known for being a little buzzstorm in the fight, man. She's known for that, but in her last win, I think she just lost her last fight, but in the win before that, she took the easy approach. She took the calculated approach, the safer approach to the fight. Wrestle fucked her opponent to victory, and it is what it is. Sometimes you got to get that dub. Then she comes back and gets arm barred. Kind of in and up and down slope for Jessica Rose Clark, but why I like her as a fighter, man, she's vicious in there, and if you give her the opportunity and you piss this woman off, she's going to come back with some claws. Same thing with Julija Stoliarenko, man. She's on a little bit of a downward trend right now. She's lost her last 3 of her last 5 fights. She's actually been on a 3-fight losing streak right now. A little rough for Stoliarenko, but she's one of the names that you remember back in the day, man. She's one of the not pioneers of the women's division, but a staple nonetheless, and she's very, very game to fight. Good all around. This is going to be a pretty interesting match. I'm expecting it to go to the distance, but I'm also expecting a war right here. Going to be a lot of fun. Again, leading off the early prelims, so check it out, folks. It's going to be a scrap. Derick, what do you think, and who's your fighter, or what is your sleeper?
Well, you can't go wrong with the Jessica Rose Clark fight, and especially in a fight where she got submitted in her last outing to then fight the armbar specialist in Julija Stoliarenko. I mean, brother, this is just a different type of contest right here. This is going back into the fire. This is getting PTSD and then saying, I'm going to revisit my trauma to get past it. So you have to be impressed by that by Jessica Rose Clark. Very fun fight. And remember, remember, folks, everything in the UFC is intentional, right? All of this is strategic and planned. So understand that if they put this bout first, it's for a good reason. They're trying to kick off the night with a bang. This is on ABC. So do not forget, man, just if you got cable, who got cable these days? But if you got cable, YouTube TV, ABC, there you need to go for the first fight of the night, right? However, for me, I got a fun sleeper too. My sleeper is not really going to be from the same mold, but my sleeper is an exciting one, I think I'd have to say. And I need to talk about today, and I'm even going to go and take a look at some records right here. We're talking about the mean fighting Hawaiian Brad Tavares. He's taking a very, very long-awaited bout against Dricus du Plessis. So we're looking at Brad Tavares. He's coming off 2 big wins against Shoeface, Antonio Carlos Jr., who's actually now a PFL winner, right? So this is a new champion in other leagues out there. And Omari Akhmadov. Yeah, you have a loss to the champion, Israel Adesanya. You have a loss to Edmund Shabazi and get kicked in your head and all that. But if you look at it in the grand scheme of things, this is a mean dude who is a tough fighter who can put you away at any given time, or he could walk through a barrage of punches to put you in an absolute war. The only problem is he's fighting a dude named Dricus du Plessis, 16-2. All 16 wins are via finishes. And I'll tell you what, man, Dricus du Plessis is not a man that you want to keep your hands down, not a man who you want to take too many shots from, because in his last fight against Trevin Giles, he had the walk-off, right cross to the ground and pound. Marcus Perez knocked him out with the left hook. You got guillotine chokes. You got knockouts by punches. You got just, this is a man right here who just speaks violence with his fists right here. So AJ, this is one of those bouts right here where a lot of people don't know about Dricus du Plessis, but I'm telling you this, man, when you have a dangerous man like him against an established UFC veteran like Brad Tavares, fireworks are almost guaranteed. And if I actually want to take a look right here, if we're looking at like knockout props between these fighters, plus 190 is the knockout prop for Dricus du Plessis, which goes to show, man, the odds makers themselves are like, hey, this guy is going to be coming for some heat. Decision prop for Dricus du Plessis, plus 310, plus 175 for Brad Tavares, man. So if Tavares, he's getting it done through a war of attrition. Dricus du Plessis, he's knocking your face off your shoulders. So whether you want to rock with Jessica Rose Clark and Yulia Stoliarenko, or you want to talk about Brad Tavares and Dricus du Plessis, both of them are going to be bangers. There's ranked fighters in both of these matches. And these are like arguably the first like 4 fights of the night. So you have so many bangers on here. You already know what time it is. Those are your sleepers, folks. That's what you need to tune into. Well, without any further ado, we could talk about some prelim pour-over a little bit later. We need to get into this title fight, brother. Let's get it.
Here's to another main card breakdown, courtesy of your hosts, Derick G and AJ.
AJ, off the bat, I need to ask you this question. Is Israel Adesanya, is he entering that Valentina Shevchenko territory? Is he entering that Amanda Nunes territory where now we're saying, we got another guy, you know, like, is this the real contender or is this another guy? And I don't want to be disrespectful to Jared Cannonier because this is a man right here who, listen, what he did to Derek Brunson in his last outing was very impressive. Not a lot of people can do that to him. What he did against Kelvin Gastelum, Jack Hermanson, right? He has big, big wins, but he's also advanced in age, 38 years old, brother. So let's talk about it. Is he a real contender or is this a placeholder until the UFC can then get their narrative through and get Alex Pereira a title shot? What do you think?
I mean, it seems like it's leading towards the latter, doesn't it? You know, Jared Cannonier, older in age, but if you look back at this dude's story, man, starting off in Alaska, being a truck driver, driving, 12 to 18 hours, however many hours they drive up there, and still getting to the gym, starting off at heavyweight, dropping down through the divisions, and now you're finally facing the champ. This is what stories are made of, man. This is what the UFC is all about right here, is that narrative. But also at the same point, you got Pereira looming in the background. So I think as much as everybody's kind of counting out Jared Cannonier, I do think he's very much a game opponent for the champ, for Stylebender. Just in the way he does. Nobody handles Brunson like that. You know what I'm saying? Going back to one of his last fights, man, nobody does what Jared Cannonier does to Brunson in that kind of fashion. And if he can, get the wrestling going, get the pressure going, use his strength against Izzy, who knows? We might be able to see something because Jared Cannonier, at the end of the day, he's fought those 265ers, those 205ers, those bigger guys. So he's felt that kind of weight. And we saw what happened when Izzy went up and felt that kind of weight in 205 against Jan. And obviously Jan versus Jared Cannonier, maybe not the same level of wrestling, but the feeling of that person, the strength, the movement, you're not surprised by anything in there. And I think that's what gives Jared Cannonier his best advantage or way to victory, if you will. That kind of confidence is he's been in there with some big boys before. And if you go in, put the pressure on, get the wrestling going, it'd be interesting to see what Cannonier can get done. Now, on that other hand, Derick, Israel Adesanya, he says that he's most proud of his wrestling. You know, he's worked on it like tenfold, whatever the case is. Do you think that's bravado, or is that something that's actually happening? And are we going to see that put to action?
Well, you know what? I do think that there has to be something there. I do ultimately think that Israel Adesanya, ever since the exposure that the Jan Blachowicz fight gave him of his grappling and of his ground game, I think it's gone to show, I guess I should say, that he has an improved level there. So if any contender wants to come up here and wants to say, I'm just going to wrestle him and that's how I'm going to win, that's definitely a path. But his get-ups have been much improved, man. His ability to grab an underhook when he's pushed up against the cage and fight off the wrestling, fight off the shot at the hips. I mean, all of that stuff has been much improved. And given that he's already a glorious kickboxer, I think that just making him more and more well-rounded. I think he did say that at the end of the day, he wants to end his career knowing that he's done every technique that you can do imaginable. Like, he wants to be the most well-rounded fighter. So if he's not able to do those techniques, if he has to be one-dimensional, then he hasn't really lived the career that he wants to. So I don't think that there's too much bravado by Israel Adesanya, but at the end of the day, you have to find ways to motivate yourself as well. So whether that means I'll take whatever challenge you could bring me. If you want to make it grappling, we can grapple. If you want to kickbox, we can kickbox. But I do think that there's a little bit of gamesmanship to be had here, AJ. And the reason why is because if you look at Israel Adesanya's fight against Paulo Costa, this is one that I see being somewhat similar in this matchup against Jared Cannonier. Israel Adesanya is a master of footwork. That's the one thing that I think is going to give Cannonier some big problems here. Because if you notice, Cannonier, he does switch stances back and forth. He has massive, terrible leg kicks, and terrible in the best ways. Like, he just destroyed. Look at what he did to Anderson Silva, man. He just tore that dude up, finished him with leg kicks, right? But he's very flat-footed. He's just kind of stomping and, you know what I mean, just like walking you down and all that. Israel Adesanya, he's going to cut corners. He's going to throw a bunch of feints. He's going to make you impatient. So that's the question that I have here for you, AJ. If Jared Cannonier rests on his laurels a little bit and rests on his experience and his veteranship and says, I've been there with the big names and all that, right? And he tries to take it patient. Don't you think Israel Adesanya can just kind of easily, at distance, pick him apart for 5 rounds and get an easy decision? Like, that's, I think, the best path to victory, especially given Cannonier can knock you out with one shot. What do you think?
Well, and I think if Cannonier depends on that one-shot power, depends on that plotting, it depends on his normal style of fighting, it's basically just shooting fish in a barrel for Adesanya. The footwork he has and the style he brings to the fight, very, very challenging for somebody who's plotting around like that, fighting against somebody who's flowing, man. Yeah,
and I think that there are going to be holes there because Jared Cannonier, admittedly, when he switches stances, he gets very square in the middle. And Adesanya, all he does is take, very Anderson Silva-esque, take reads, and then once he gets a read on what you're doing, as soon as you make that transition, boom, that's when he pops in. That's when he throws that big right hand over the top. That's when he throws the question mark kick, you know what I mean? That's when he looks for the highlight reel because Israel Adesanya, it's fair to say he's a sniper, right? You know what I mean? Like, he's not the volume guy. He's the pick his shots methodically type of guy. But, I mean, let's be real, since you already brought it up, AJ, does Jared Cannonier say, I'm going to get you into the middle of the cage, I'm just going to shoot and try to hold you down for 5 rounds? Like, he doesn't have many takedowns on his entire resume. If you look at his last, 10 fights, maybe he has, 1 or 2 takedowns. So do you think that's the game plan, or do you do what got you to the dance, which is rely on that one-shot power and knock your opponents out?
Man, I think you have to go with the wrestling personally, and that's what I have for Jared Cannonier. Yeah. Will the wrestling come into play? I think so, because if you're depending on one shot against a sniper who can also hit you with that one shot, and all you do is overextend, and he's already slipped, and you see him looking at you, you know, like, oh, this dude's about to crack. As much as I think the right hand could come into play for Jared Cannonier, I think it's going to be better for him to wrestle his way in, something close, and when you have Izzy thinking about the wrestling, then you drop back to your original game plan. Maybe you can land something, but uphill battle for Cannonier nonetheless.
Brother, what a story would it be if Cannonier is the guy to dethrone Izzy? I mean, Yoel Romero couldn't do it. Costa couldn't do it. Vettori couldn't do it. Whitaker twice couldn't do it. Like, if Cannonier is the guy, that'd be an incredible story. But I guess the last thing that I want to take, before we talk about props, is that Israel Adesanya is very smart and very patient. And he has this method of allowing Cannonier or any one of his opponents to fall on their shield. And what that means is that, or I fall on their sword, excuse me. What I mean by that is that they'll get so impatient, they'll rush in on Izzy because Izzy will just sit back, pick you apart at distance. They'll rush in on him, and that's when he'll then open up for those counter strikes. So he's saying, I'm going to let you fall on your own sword. I'm going to let impatience literally kill you in this fight because I'm going to make you fight my fight. And I think that's more or less how Stylebender is able to corral his opponents. Let's not forget, 6'4" is Adesanya, 5'11" is Cannonier, 80-inch reach for Adesanya, 77.5-inch reach for Cannonier. So that 3-inch reach advantage is going to play a part. But let's talk about it now, AJ. So TKO prop for Israel Adesanya, plus 160. Guess what it is for Jared Cannonier, but the plus 500. Now, that's a little ridiculous, right? Because if there's one way for Cannonier to win, that's probably the way, right? So what the odds makers, I mean, they're giving long shots for Cannonier. Even for a decision prop, it's plus 650. So plus 500 for a TKO, plus 650 for a decision, and plus 2,000 for a submission. They're giving Cannonier no shot. If you're a fan of Cannonier and you're a betting man, which clearly you are if you're tuning into this program, what do you think about that plus 500 for the TKO? That's the method to the victory. That's the path to victory. What do you think?
That's the path for Jared, man. I think, and it's crazy that that's the best odds he has to winning is a plus 500 TKO. But I mean, still, he has the power; he can get it done. So I see where the odds makers are coming from, though. I do see it.
But if you're a betting man, do you just say, okay, well, just give me the plus 320 money line? Like, what are we talking about here? Like, why? You know what I mean? Like, because if it's plus 500 for a TKO, plus 320 for any method of victory. I mean, who's to say, man, that we couldn't? What if he gets how many submissions does he have? 2 submissions? Who's to say he couldn't? I don't know, but that's not going to happen. But come on.
Maybe. I mean, I don't see Izzy putting himself in a position to get submitted. You know what I'm saying? If they're going to be wrestling, I think it's going to be Jared Cannonier just on top holding him down. But I don't know.
What's crazy is we didn't see Yuri Prohashka submitting Glover Teixeira neither, and it happened, brother. So that's what I'm saying. You have to take these things into account. Lastly, Israel Adesanya. Let's talk about it. Clearly, if you saw the TLDR, we're picking with and still with the champion here. Plus 160 for the TKO, plus 125 for the decision, and plus 1,400 for the submission. What do you like there, brother?
Man, they're really taking that decision as the best one. I'm gonna go decision as well. Yeah. For something tells me Izzy likes Cannonier in there so much that he's not just gonna absolutely put him, through the ringer. Like sure. he's gonna have a match instead of a fight, if you know what I mean. And I could be wrong. Hopefully I'm wrong. We might see some fireworks in there, and Izzy might get the ego going and actually put Cannonier to sleep. But I'm going to go decision just because I think it's, have you ever fought your friend in there and you're putting it to him, you're working him, you're like, all right, I'm going to do a little easy. But at the same point, that's how you get knocked down in the big game. So who knows? I'm going Izzy by decision. What about you, Derek?
Okay. No, that is, man. I'm rocking with the decision there. And I can relate with that from a jiu-jitsu sense, right? I guess from boxing too, but from a jiu-jitsu sense, I've actually fought teammates in tournaments. You know what I mean? It's just not the same. You don't have the same level of intensity, right? But that is how you get hurt. You're right about that. So, yeah, I like the over. I like the decision here from Israel Adesanya because, like I said, I see this as being like a Paulo Costa fight all over again. I just think Jared Cannonier won't do what Costa did, which is rush in all aggressively and taunt and do all that crazy stuff. I think he's going to sit there, pick him apart, try to pick him apart with the leg kicks. We'll see who wins that battle. But ultimately, I think the decision is the best play because if you think about the only 2 people that Israel Adesanya has finished in his last 5 fights for title defenses, right, or title matches, it's Robert Whittaker and Paulo Costa. And I guess the Whittaker one was over 5 fights ago. So I think in his whole title reign, it's just been Costa and Whittaker, the only people he's finished. Decisions all across the board. I think it's a very safe bet. And with that being said, Israel Adesanya and still. But that's not even the people's main event, man. The people's main event is this one right here, brother. And we got a lot to talk about, my man. Alexander Volkanovski versus Max Holloway, the trilogy for the featherweight title. Volkanovski, he's a minus 190 favorite with a plus 170 comeback for Max Holloway. And what you said on the intro, AJ, is a sentiment that a lot of fans agree with, and I agreed with a lot at one point. And that sentiment is that Volkanovski, he did the right thing. He stole the fight from Holloway in the first one, and he got the job done. Unanimous decision. Second fight, robbery. Holloway should have won. However, AJ, upon further review, my man, I think it's a little more complicated than that, brother. And the reason why I think that is because I've watched the second fight a million times, but I watched it again, AJ, and I actually took a different approach this time. The approach that I took this time is I said, let me score it round by round and kind of see, like, why did I think so-and-so win this round or win that round, right? So you don't have to have numbers in front of you right now. That's not really the point. But I personally think that rounds 1 and 2, you can give it to Max Holloway. You can give Max Holloway those first couple of rounds, right? However, rounds 3, 4, and 5, I think you got to give it to Volk, brother. And the reason why is because Volkanovski is sneaky, man, and he does this, and this is why I think his chances of and still are so high here. AJ, Volkanovski knows how to play the game of racking up points. So while Holloway is sitting there back, he might have the bigger moments, but Volkanovski is picking at you throughout the entire fight. The entire round, he's picking at you. Leg kick, leg kick, leg kick. He'll literally leg kick, double up on the leg kick, double jab, right? He'll hit you with just little points, right? And to get those striking numbers a little skewed to a degree. So what you'll end up seeing is that, yeah, Holloway had control. He had the cage control. He's walking down Volkanovski, but Volkanovski is doing the little things to get up on the points. And I think he can do that again here in this third fight, especially if Holloway says, if he does what he said he was going to do, which is he says he's going to fight the exact same fight. He's not going to fight any different. He thinks he won the second fight. He thinks he did enough. But that's the key. This is the same thing with the Mateusz Gamrot versus Arman Tsarukyan. Tsarukyan opened up, great couple rounds, and then Gamrot did just enough to edge it out. And then you have to think about this too, AJ. And I know this sucks, but this is the reality. Volkanovski is the champion. So do you think if you barely edge it out, they're going to give it to Holloway? I think they're going to give Volkanovski the John Jones treatment at this point, man. Even though people love Holloway, I think Holloway's going to have to do something very impressive to truly get this one done. Do you agree with me, or do you think it's going to be as cut and dry as, no, better judges, second fight all over again, he wins? What do you think?
I agree with you to a point.
Yeah.
To a point, because I the same thing. I gave Volkanovski the last 2 rounds, Max the first 2 rounds, and it's really how you see that third round going. Because to me, I thought Max was working the game plan, very, very nicely. And as much as you say that Volkanovski's getting the points, he's doing the little things that count. The little leg kicks, the timing. He's getting, his little shots in there. Are we playing pitter patter, or are we fighting? You know what I'm saying? Like, are those little leg kicks that aren't doing any damage, or do they actually compound, or are those big numbers for the judges? You're shooting in for takedowns. He counts as control time, but does it really impact the fight as much as getting whopped on? So I don't know. I mean, there's a whole bunch to argue back and forth about it, because I think Max did 1 through 3 way better, and then he started to fall off on 4 and 5 in the last fight. Which, in that case, if you are the champ and you're just falling, in those last couple rounds, you're losing a little bit more. This is a fight to the death. We've said it all the time. Those last rounds should weigh a little bit more. So I did the same. I watched the second one back. I was looking at it, and like I said, I gave Max 1 through 3, but I gave Volkanovski 4 and 5. But at the same point, I still kind of weigh those rounds a little bit heavier. Like I do. Like it probably shouldn't be that way, but it does really matter in a 5-round fight, how you finish the fight. So if it's the same way, hopefully Max can get the thing going and finish it by 3, because I don't think Volkanovski, the longer the fight gets going, the better this dude gets. And his brain, his mental game is very hard to beat. This dude gets going and he gets on his tangent. He starts feeling good. Man, he's rolling in there. So it's going to be a scrap.
I agree with you, bro. And part of the little things that I'm talking about, especially in the rematch, is the little things such as it's rounds 3, 4, 5, and I just secured a takedown at the end of the round, right? Like, those are the things, how much they get outweighed by the judges these days, the control time, all that, right? So when I'm looking at the numbers, Alexander Volkanovski in the rematch, he outstruck Holloway by over 30 strikes, man. It was like 35 strikes he outstruck him by. And he had 1 minute and 26 of control time with 3 takedowns. That's what wins you the fight. Now, you can argue the same thing that I argue, which is, well, did you do anything with the takedown? No, then it shouldn't count. But in the eyes of the judges, not us, but the judges, it does count, brother. And they play that little game, which is why, though, listen, we can say it a million times. We say it every week. The scoring criteria needs to be different. Like, it needs to be more known and more understood. But what's different in this fight, AJ? That's the question, because we could talk about revisionist history all day long. What's different in this fight? Does Holloway say, I know I need to come out to a fast start, I know I need to be on my game? Or do I come out to a more patient start so then I could take over rounds 3, 4, and 5, the ones that he lost in the second fight? Which approach does he take?
Man, that's a scary one. I always say start fast, finish fast. Get them going, get in there, do your game plan, beat them up, get going, easy night for you. But you do that, then you end up with Aljamain Sterling, Petr Yan #1, where Aljo came out hot, beating up Petr Yan. Nobody knew what was going on, and that gas tank just starts dropping. So I don't think Max is going to have a gas tank issue per se, but I do think that if he comes out and he's starting going and gets the edge early, I think he can look really good in that fight. I prefer him to start strong, start fast, but I can see the trouble in it. And so I don't know, man. And this one, I really think if Max leaves it to the judges, I agree with you. I think they're going to give Volkanovski that John Jones treatment. He's on the other 2. Like, it's just one of those things. And the judges probably don't want to see a 4th fight or a 5th fight or anything else coming forward. So hopefully it's not the case. Hopefully we get a decision. I think Max Holloway knows that he needs a finish for this one. Yeah. But I don't know, man. It's hard. It's do you dump the gas tank at the beginning? Do you burn your boats? Or do you have the safety plan? What would you say?
Sheesh, man. If you're Holloway, I think you need to take the safest, most effective route possible, because if he loses this bout, brother, I don't know, because he's saying what he wants to do is restore balance to the universe, right? Is by getting his title back. He says the universe is out of balance until he's the champion. But at the same time, Volkanovski has proved to be an incredible champion himself, man. So, yeah, I think he needs to play a safe, aggressive approach, but don't do too much different than what you already did, because the second fight was close enough to where it was a split decision, right? This is the question, though, right here. Does it give you any cause for concern that Alexander Volkanovski, since taking the belt from Holloway and that rematch, he's more or less had dominant victories against Chan Sung Jung, the Korean zombie, and Brian Ortega. Those are dominant victories. Yeah, there was some spots for trouble in the Ortega fight, but he won that like 50-45 or something. Max Holloway, though, that dominant win against Calvin Kattar, another 50-45 there. But that Yair Rodriguez fight could be a cause for concern, brother, because that was a close fight. So if you had a close fight against Yair Rodriguez and now you're coming into this one thinking I'm the man, all that, I guess the question that I'm asking you ultimately is who comes in with the championship mentality? Is it Holloway or is it Volkanovski? Because I feel like Volkanovski is going to come in here with the challenger mentality to finally put this thing to bed. What do you think?
I think so. I think Max Holloway's coming in. His mindset's already set. He knows what it is, and he even said it, man. He's like, I'm the champ regardless. Champ mindset's a thing. You know what I'm saying? I don't need the belt to name me the champion. I live a championship lifestyle, and I think if he comes into this fight with this one, man, I'm expecting great things. And nonetheless, whether Volkanovski or Max Holloway wins, I think this one's going to be fight of the night, man. We're going to see some crazy fireworks, and I'm hoping for an early round finish. I'm excited to see what the props are. Yeah, man, it's going to be a fun one. What do you think, Derek?
Well, so the last thing to note, I think this is going to be a banger, obviously, man. I think this is the real people's main event. This is what people are tuning into. This is the two fighters that should be on the cover of the poster. It should be Volkanovski and Holloway, not Adesanya and Cannonier personally, but that's neither here nor there. But I also think there's larger implications at hand, and those larger implications include Volkanovski having currently, three title defenses, right? And Holloway, I think he had like 4 title defenses. So if Volkanovski can get that 4th title defense, he'd more or less be on par, if not slightly above Max Holloway in the grand scheme of the featherweight GOAT picture. Now, Jose Aldo, I think he had 8 title defenses, right? So there's no competing there. Ultimately, Jose Aldo is at the top of the pinnacle. We know what time it is. However, since he's still fighting, we just don't view him that way. But this is the greatness scale right here. Who is going to be great? Who dares to be great? And the winner of this matchup is going to give us that answer right there. My only cause for concern is that, like, if Holloway loses, man, I just don't know where you go with him. He's going to be bona fide that dude who was number 1 until you were number 2, and then you're just kind of stuck there. But if Volkanovski, you're right. If Volkanovski loses, bro, I have an odd feeling the UFC is going to try to stiff him in a weird way where, like, we do not want to see a 4th fight, because if you win the 4th fight, now we have to fight a 5th time. It's like, brother, it's just too many. You can't do that many. So I do anticipate some weirdness coming up, or they just say give somebody else a turn. It's been you two fighting a million times for the title. We'll see what happens. That's enough of the storylines. Clearly, we're at odds when it comes down to the pick, so let's talk props, brother. So for the prop bets, for a TKO victory, Alexander Volkanovski is at plus 350. But what's even crazier to me is Max Holloway is at plus 575. So to me, they're saying if someone can knock someone out, it's Volkanovski. But I see it the other way. Because if you remember in the second fight, Holloway, I think he had Volkanovski in trouble a couple of times, brother. So what do you make of those TKO props?
Yeah, it's interesting to me because I thought Max would have the better chance of the TKO. I mean, we've seen in multiple fights, he's the one with the hands, he's the one with the feet, he has the timing, he has precision, he has all the X factors to go into it, where Alexander Volkanovski has the grit, has the determination, has that mindset. So I'm interested, I'm curious to why. There's always, I forget who it was I think it was Izzy talking about that the odds makers, they don't know where they get their stuff. There has to be something. There has to be something behind that, but I still like Max Holloway better for a knockout.
Yeah, me too, which is why it's a little surprising to see those odds. But the real money shot comes into the decision prop. Plus 100 is a decision prop for Alexander Volkanovski, plus 285 for Max Holloway. And this is another one too. If you look at it, Holloway has 11 decision wins, Volkanovski has 9. Holloway has 10 knockouts, Volkanovski has 12. So it's just so evenly matched up. I guess that's why the odds makers are putting it out like this. But if you had to roll with one, brother, I could talk about the sub. The sub is plus 1,400 for Volkanovski, plus 2,000 for Holloway. So that's neither here nor there. But if you have Holloway, which is who you have, how does he get it done?
I'm thinking knockout, man. Holloway, KO, and I'm looking like a round 3 finish. Get going fast. Like I said, start strong, start fast, finish the fight early. What'd you say the prop was again?
For the knockout, it's plus 575 for Max Holloway.
Plus 575. Yeah, I think you take the money line. I think you take that plus 170. It seems a little smarter, but I do think he'll get it done by knockout. But if you're taking a bet, you take that money line bet. Yeah, I'll go knockout. I'll go knockout round 3. just for the final decision.
All right, my man is
I know,
going
I'm back and forth battling in my brain over here, brother.
That's how good of a fight this is. So you're taking the under because the over and under is 4.5 rounds right here, and actually they have plus 200 for the under right there, man. So you might hit big. If you hit on this one, you're going to hit big. However, I'm going to have to go on the opposite scale. Volkanovski couldn't finish him in the first one, didn't come close to finishing him in the second one, and I don't think he'll come close to finishing him in the third one. I think if he wins, it's going to have to be in grinded out. I want to keep my belt and still fashion, which I'm not saying you can't respect, but I will say that's the smart thing to do. So I'm rolling with Volkanovski, another decision win. This time, though, I don't see it being split. I see it being unanimous. And trust me, listen, all that aside, I love Max Holloway, and I wish there was a way where both these dudes could be champions, like Volk moved up or Holloway moved up. But either way, I love Max Holloway, and I just hope that we have a banger of a fight right there. So those are your two title bouts right there, folks. Clearly contested, but that's the people's main event right there. All right, AJ, now this is the real fight in terms of like stipulation right here. They're trying to build up the storyline. Alex Pereira, he finishes Israel Adesanya, had him carried out on a stretcher, and then got another decision win over him in kickboxing. Now it's in MMA. Dude's got 6 fights, and now he's finally catapulted up to the Sean Strickland level. Now, brother, these were opening odds, courtesy of William Hill, Nevada Sportsbook right here, my man. But the problem is these odds have swelled up pretty significantly, my man. So I do not believe that Alex Pereira is only a minus 115 favorite at this point. And I'll look it up while we're kind of doing this stuff. But at this point, I think Pereira has swelled to at least minus 120. So it looks like what we have right here, my man. When I'm looking it up, we have Sean Strickland. Okay, no. We have a new revelation, AJ, live on the broadcast right here. So last time I checked this, which was like last night, right? Alex Pereira was as much as a minus 120 favorite, and it was even money on Sean Strickland. Now, currently, as I'm recording, minus 115 is Sean Strickland, minus 105 Alex Pereira. So the odds have flipped. So let's talk about it, brother. Pereira, if it's standing, man, that left hand is going to give you real deal problems, bro. Takedown defense is looking solid, and he's such a patient. That's what makes him so unique. He's so large at like 6'4", right? He's patient, and he's willing to just hit you with power. But if you notice, he sits down on all of his shots. Sean Strickland, technically sound, shoulder up, and he's sitting there. And as much as brash as Sean Strickland is, as much as he talks, as much bravado as Sean Strickland has, in the cage, he's very technical. In the cage, he takes almost no risks. Like at the end of the day, he's a safe fighter. So he's just sitting there, shoulder up, in, out, hitting you with volume. He does swing wild sometimes, so he is there to be caught. But at the end of the day, I do think that this is going to be one of those matchups where Alex Pereira, who's very, very successful in the kickboxing route, is going to come into the highest of levels of MMA, the top 5 of the middleweight division, and have a little bit of a surprise on his hands, being like, this is a little more difficult than I thought. Do you agree with my methodology here? Do you think Pereira comes in and just stiffs him?
No, I agree with you. I think Pereira, as much as the fast track for Pereira is probably the best track, and they're really trying to create that narrative, I think it might be a little too fast, man. There's nothing worse than when you are that patient, that calculated striker that has been doing it for years. You're so comfortable in there, and a dude comes up and keeps shoulder rolling you and then talking shit to your face, calling you, all kinds of expletives and all these words, and then he's walking you down. There's nothing else you can do after that, because he's going to be the fighter. Sean Strickland's going to be the fighter that is way more well-rounded. I don't see this fight going to the ground, don't get me wrong, but I do think Sean Strickland has all of the other intangibles that Alex Pereira just hasn't had enough time to develop. He doesn't have the what's the word I'm looking for, like the poise inside the UFC octagon. Sure, he might have it in the glory and in the kickboxing and all these other ones, but when you get in there, you got 4-ounce gloves, and the dude can shoulder roll. He's getting up close, clinching. There's a lot of other things that this fight game is just so much more than just kickboxing. So we might see Sean Strickland jump to the ground, but I doubt it. I think it's going to be a classic technical striking battle. And there's nothing worse than when you're fighting your best fight and the dude standing there is taking everything you can. You're feeling him just roll the punches right off, dipping underneath, and then he's still right there talking shit, ready to fight and bringing the fight, man. That's the thing about Sean Strickland. This dude brings a fight regardless, which is kind of a double-edged sword. You know what I'm saying? Like if he has crisp hands, he's in there, he's mean. But if his ego gets the best of him, he might catch a thumping left hand from Alex Pereira, and we haven't seen if the chin of Sean Strickland can hold up like that. I think it can. I think he can. I think he's very powerful in there. And he's probably the one guy the UFC doesn't want to win this fight.
Yeah.
Imagine you see Sean Strickland as a UFC, title holder. This dude's wild man, bro, wild man. But you gotta love him for it. I love the wild men out there that are they're people. They're their own animal. Sean Strickland is his own animal. Nothing like him.
Yeah, I agree with you right there. Yeah, very well said at the end of the day. That was a pretty good analysis of what is taking place here. And I do agree, Sean Strickland, I think he was taught in the media obligations. He was like teaching the media members about like inflation and all that. You know what I mean? Like this dude is just a nut, man. But once again, Alex Pereira, he might be getting fast tracked just a little too fast. I do want to touch on that note that you made where you said that we haven't seen if Sean Strickland's chin has really been tested. I will say out of 15 UFC fights, the man has been finished once, and it was a knockout. And it actually came in the hands of Lizu Zaleski dos Santos. It was a spinning hook kick, followed up by a couple of punches. Only time the man's been knocked out. The man has fought Tom Breeze, Kamaru Usman, Court McGee, Jack Marshman, Brendan Allen, Christoph Jotko, Jack Hermanson. You know what I mean? If we want to go down even further, like this dude's fought like kind of the best of the best. You know what I mean? Like a lot of really, really good fighters, and the chin is held up, brother. So I don't think that's going to be too much of a problem. However, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. I'm going to be fully transparent. The Alex Pereira TKO prop is plus 140, right? So it's pretty good, right? And right now, like on ours, so on the notes that I have right now, it's plus 135. So it's currently plus 140. I actually put in a bet for Alex Pereira knockout at plus 135 just because if there's literally any way for him to win, I think that is the only way. There's no other way for him to win. I don't really see a decision. I don't see you outworking Sean Strickland. He's a volume guy. I think it's going to be very tough. Sean Strickland, he did say, worst case scenario, he's going to take the coward's approach, and he's going to start wrestling with Pereira, even though his wrestling isn't too great, but he's going to start grappling with him, you know what I mean, if the going gets tough. But I picked that Pereira prop just because I do think it's juicy, man. I do think that Pereira's left hand, if he hits Strickland in one of those openings, man, he can get the job done. But I'm overwhelmingly in favor of the thought process of Sean Strickland doing what he does best, man. Jab, 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 jab all day long. Look at what he did to Uriah Hall, one of the most dangerous knockout strikers there are. Yeah, he's a little more of a patient guy, but one of the most dangerous guys. And he just picked him apart for 5 rounds, mixed in some grappling, some ground and pound, and just demoralized him. I think we might see something like this, but you tell me, AJ, give me the pushback. Is this going to be a back and forth war, or is this going to be a one-sided demoralization by the hands of Sean Strickland?
I think this is going to be a lot closer to a back and forth war than a lot of people are expecting. Or I guess maybe not expecting because the odds are pretty damn close. So I think it's going to be back and forth a little bit. Alex Pereira probably has the better kicks, has that left hand, all the power in the left hand, but Sean Strickland's a dog in there. So I think we're going to see a back and forth battle going forward, but then Sean Strickland towards the end of the fight is going to start pulling away. Once the ego gets bruised a little bit, or the strikes really aren't falling where they must for Pereira, that's when I think Sean Strickland's mental game and everything else is going to really start pulling away right there. What do you think, Derick?
Okay, brother. So I'm going to ask you this really quickly, bro. Because I agree basically with the sentiment. I think that if this goes long, it's all Sean Strickland. But the question that I have for you is, do you think Sean Strickland gets dropped in this fight? And if he does, how many times?
Ooh, I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to say 1. Okay. I think he'll get dropped. I think that's when the ego will take over. He's going to start getting a little chippy, get a little proud in there, catch one on the chin, get dropped. But I don't think he'll let it happen again. What about you? What do you think?
I think there is a high possibility of him getting dropped once in this fight. And when he does, I think he won't go mad, man. I think he'll tighten the defenses back up and then get straight back to the technical. That's why you got to love Sean Strickland, man. Because really what it comes down to for him, it's the high guard, for the quick jab, the willingness to stand his ground, the good jiu-jitsu, more of a attrition fighter, but he's heavy on that lead leg. So we do need to see if Pereira tears apart that leg. We'll see what happens. We'll just get into the props, brother. Sean Strickland TKO plus 385, plus 135, like I said, for Alex Pereira. The decision prop, though, plus 275 for Strickland and plus 400 for Alex Pereira, brother. So how do you see this going out?
Oof. I'm thinking decision for Sean Strickland. What did you say the prop was again?
The prop for a decision for Sean Strickland is 275, plus 275.
Plus 275. I'm thinking decision for Sean Strickland. I like the little better. I can see both of these guys knocking each other out, but at the same point, I feel like once you get the chin checked a little, then I think the defense tightens up from both sides. And we're going to see a battle. I'm going Sean Strickland by decision. What about you, Derick?
Yeah, I like Sean Strickland by decision here. Like I said, man, if there is a finish, I do see Pereira bringing the finish, but I do like Sean Strickland on points. I just think that it's hard to outpoint a man like Sean Strickland, who is so busy, who's constantly moving forward, constantly chipping at you, talking, jabbing. You know how it goes. So That's what it is, man. And don't forget, folks, like I said, live in the flesh when I pulled it up, Sean Strickland is now the betting favorite right there. So it goes to show the money is moving. But in this classic matchup right here, AJ, I have to tell the good folks at home, man. Robbie Lawler is coming off a big win by Nick Diaz, but Bryan Barberena, he has gotten the fortunate good nature by the UFC, by Dana White, to say you get to fight all the legends, all the OGs, all the 40 and uppers, right? So this is the second 40-plus-year-old fighter that Bryan Barberena, Bam Bam, is going to be taking on in a row. Matt Brown in his last one got a split decision in Columbus, Ohio, I believe, so in the hometown of Matt Brown, or in the home state, right? And now you get ruthless Robbie Lawler. And the question that I have for you here, AJ, is do you agree or disagree with the odds makers? Because I heavily disagree, and I think it's actually kind of preposterous that at 40 years old, Robbie Lawler is a minus 125 favorite against the young gun Bryan Barberena, all of 33 years old, willing to get out there, bang, scrap, and bring the fight. I mean, what do you think?
I was expecting Lawler to be the favorite strictly because of his name, man. A lot of people sleep on Bam Bam, but we've talked about Bam Bam quite a few times, man, and still, a lot of people sleep on it. This dude got absolute power, and this is the one fight of the night where I was back and forth, man. I didn't know which one to send when I was sending my picks and whether it was going to be Barberena or whether it was going to be Lawler. This one's going to be a scrap. I was expecting the favorite to be this way, but like I said, because of the name value that Robbie Lawler possesses and you know, just all the stuff that comes with ruthless, you know what I'm saying? Like, I expect him to be the favorite. But let's not forget, man, Barberena's been in the UFC since 2014. And he's fought, you know, the who's who, the Sage Northcutts, the Warley Alves, Colby Covington, Leon Edwards, Vicente Luque, Randy Brown. He's lost a lot of these fights, sure. But that just means this dude's an absolute dog and down to get in there. And I feel like this is one of those final, maybe not final, but one of those chances in which Barberena can prove that he's the real deal. He's a fighter to pay attention to. And if you can get one up on Robbie Lawler, that's a hell of a notch in the old belt. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is a fight where he can finally get the recognition that he deserves if he can get one over Robbie Lawler. Now, will it happen? I don't think so, but it is a fight. And if both people can walk in and have an absolute war, I think both stocks will jump up significantly. So it's going to be a good fight to watch either way. I don't know, Derek. What do you think? Is Barberena still being slept on? Am I making too much of that, or what do you think?
Bryan Barberena, Bam Bam, is absolutely being slept on right here, brother. I get it, Robbie Lawler, ruthless, name value, all that stuff that you just mentioned, but Bam Bam is a dude who, listen, man, always pawn with that lead hand, setting up the jab, setting up the flurries, walking forward. If you back him up against the cage, he's circling out and putting it back on you, man. Like, this is a dude who knows how to bring the pain, but the originator of bringing the pain is truly Robbie Lawler, man, and that's what he's looking to do right now. Robbie Lawler is looking to press you up against the cage, get into some clinch situations, dirty boxing, throwing uppercuts, throwing big hooks, throwing knees, do whatever. But Bryan Barberena, I will let you know, he has nasty elbows out the clinch. So if it does get into that close range Robbie Lawler is there for, Barberena has some answers for him right there. And at the end of the day, my man, I think that the durability and the cardio is the thing that's going to hold up, that's going to give the victory edge to Bryan Barberena. Because Robbie Lawler, at 40 years old, man, he's brought it. But if you look at his last five, he's 1-4 in his last five. Losses to Rafael Dos Anjos, Ben Askren, which asterisk next to that one, right? Because that was a weird one. Colby Covington, Neil Magny, and then he gets the win against Nate Diaz. But let's not forget, even though he was having some success against Diaz, Diaz was picking him apart, bro. He was putting 5, 6, 7 shot combos on him. So that's the thing that I've noticed with Robbie Lawler, man. Robbie Lawler is a dude who, if you back him up, if you put him on the back foot and you start putting combos on him, there is really no longer the I'm going to slip the punch and I'm going to give one to you over the top. Oftentimes now what it is I'm going to shell up, I'm going to parry, and I'm just going to try to roll with the punches. I'm going to eat 5, 6, 7, 8 shots in a row. So it's going to like be you go, and then I go. You go, and then I go. And I think Bryan Barberena does not operate by that same type of methodology. It's going to be I go, I go, I go, I go until you do something back to me. So even though I find it a little hard pressed to find a finish here by either one of these fighters, like I think someone's going to sleep. I think someone could be going to sleep, but I also think these are two of the most durable men in the division to do it. This could very well go out as a decision. The only main problem I have, like I said, is that Bryan Barberena is underdog right now, and I'll even take a look at what the live odds are right now, like as we speak, courtesy of William Hill, Nevada, once again, right? And let's just take a look, man. Bryan Barberena is still plus 105, minus 125 Robbie Lawler. They're solidified. They're locked in, and that's totally cool, man. But if Robbie Lawler does get it done, what does he have to do, man? Because Bryan Barberena, southpaw, Robbie Lawler, southpaw. Robbie Lawler historically struggled against southpaws. What does he need to do to get the win?
Man, and that's the hardest part I think about breaking this whole fight down. Like, what's exactly going to happen? Are we going to see the back and forth, toe to toe that Robbie Lawler likes to do, where you go, I go, just like you're saying, or does Barberena take over? Because I mean, personally, I think Robbie Lawler's going to be in there. He's going to be working off, the timing, get in, slip a couple, bam, 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 and then let Bam Bam come back. I used the wrong words there. Slid in, let a couple combos fly, and then let Bam Bam come do his thing. But then when Bam Bam's kind of marching in, doing that, I see Robbie Lawler then, like you said, turtling up, getting the hands high, shuffling off to the side, and then going back at it again. And I think it's just going to be this war of attrition that both fighters are going to have. I don't think one person, or at least if it goes the way I'm expecting, it goes, Robbie Lawler route, I don't think either fighter is going to have an entire round where they're dominating the entire fight. I think it's going to be very back and forth, a war game going on where both people are kind of, this is my toe in the sand. Don't cross it. If you do, we got knuckles flying. And I think that's the fight that's going to happen. Yeah. How do you see this one going?
Well, brother, I can see this playing out like how Matt Brown versus Bryan Barberena was. And it was just like that. There was no clear victor in either round, really. I guess until round 3, that was a Barberena round. But yeah, it's back and forth, man. It's going to be someone won this half, the other person won this half. How do you score it? I think it could be very much like that until we get to that round 3, where, like I said, I think the cardio and durability of Bryan Barberena is going to hold up just a tad bit more. But lastly, man, just real quick, just came in the back of my mind. Do you think Robbie Lawler shoots at all in this fight?
Ooh, I do actually. I didn't think about that till you said it. I do. I think Barberena has the kind of power where if you get tagged and you're kind of, you're shaking a little bit, you see things kind of start moving, you realize, oh shit. And Robbie Lawler, he can shoot to the hips, he can get down, and I think his ground game's a little bit better than Barberena. So I'm gonna say yes, he'll shoot. What do you think?
We did see Matt Brown control Barberena, multiple takedowns in the last fight, so it's definitely something there. I don't think it's gonna happen. I think Robbie Lawler, when he gets lulled into a war, He is a war maker. You know what I mean? That's what he does. And that's what we've known him to do. That's why we love Robbie Lawler. So let's talk props. TKO for Robbie Lawler is plus 355, plus 350 for Bryan Barberena. So Barberena has the slight edge for the TKO prop. For decision, though, this is the thing that surprised me. Plus 140 for Lawler, plus 235 for Barberena. And I think that's a little absurd because I think Barberena is the one who's going to get the better of Lawler if this does go the distance right here. What do you think, bro? I mean, how does it get done?
Yeah, no, that's very interesting because I was in the same boat as you. I was thinking if Lawler's going to get this one done, it's going to be by a finish. He's going to catch some, something to the body, hurting to the head. There's going to be some sort of TKO coming, and that's what I was expecting off the jump. And Barberena, if the fight goes long, I see him lasting a little bit longer. But now with that prop, what'd you say the decision was for Robbie Lawler?
Craziness, man. It's plus 140.
Plus 140. Yeah, I'm going to take that, man. I'm going to take the Robbie Lawler decision, plus 140. I was thinking KO, but plus 355. I mean, and honestly, I think both of these fighters can knock each other out, so it is a good route to take, but I'm taking that decision by Robbie Lawler. What about you, Derek?
You know what, man? I've been going back and forth. This has been the hardest fight of all of the main card bouts that we have. I'm like, does someone get finished here, or is they're so durable, we're just going to see that war? And I think that's what I have to lead towards. Like, I don't want to, because it's looking at 4 of the 5 fights so far, I'm going decision on all of them. I'm just like, imagine how boring it's not boring, but a pay-per-view where it's all decisions. You're like, oh, this is whack, man. There's got to be one finish at least, right? So even though that being said, it's 2.5 rounds for the over and under, I just don't see Robbie Lawler falling, and I don't see Bryan Barberena, who has been knocked out twice. Last one was to Randy Brown. It was a 3rd round loss, TKO punches. I just think Barberena, man, he's going to get the better of him. I think durability, conditioning is going to be too much. Decision, Bryan Barberena for me. Decision, Robbie Lawler for you, brother. So we'll see what happens there. But definitely a swing play for sure right here. Now, my man, Pedro Munhoz, the not-so-young Punisher, the 35-year-old young Punisher, right, versus Suga Show, Sean O'Malley, man. Clearly the biggest step up in competition Sean O'Malley has taken thus far in his career. And while Pedro Munhoz is no slouch, I do think that the intangibles, or I guess I should say the measurements, definitely have him at a disadvantage, man. Sean O'Malley, as a 135-pounder, is 5'11", so you have a 5-inch height difference between Pedro Munhoz and Sean O'Malley. But the reach is really where I think Munhoz is going to have problems, man. 72-inch reach for O'Malley, 65-inch reach from Munhoz. So longer, lankier is O'Malley. How does Munhoz close the distance here, man? He has those incredible kicks, but you have to get into at least a range where you could throw the kick and land it. O'Malley could hit you from the other side of the cage. Like, how does he get the distance closed in this one?
Man, he's got to be a pit bull in there. He's got to not worry about what's coming his way and just get on the inside. Because once he does and he nullifies that range that Sean O'Malley has, nullifies the footwork a little bit, hit that peroneal nerve. I know Sean hates when everybody talks about the leg kicks. But if Pedro can get in there and he can start doing some damage on those legs, get the movement of Sean a little bit slower, that's going to be the way for Pedro to get this done. If he can get on the inside, land some stuff, maybe start a wrestling exchange. I don't think it's the best route for Pedro, but if he can and he can get the movement stifled of Sean O'Malley, then he's going to have a little bit better. But Pedro Munhoz, man, he's methodical in there. He's slow. He's not the guy who's going to be, dancing around like Michel Pereira. He's not going to be the crazy footwork that we're seeing in there. This is going to walk in. He's going to want to bang, but against Sean O'Malley, that's not the right move. It's going to be a very uphill battle for him. But if he can get on the inside, I see a little bit more greener pastures there. What do you think, Derick? How does Pedro Munhoz get this done if he can?
He's got to beat up the legs of Sean O'Malley and not get hit in return, bro. You have to immobilize Sean O'Malley and then get in on the inside and do your work. He can throw a head kick in the pocket, bro. Munhoz has crazy kicks. Like, his dexterity is incredible. The problem that I see here is that Sean O'Malley constantly switching stances. So even if he beat up one leg, well, guess what? He switched to the other one and he has the other, right? He's constantly moving. So, like, he'll enter in southpaw, and by the time he hits you, he's orthodox, right? The good old Customato shift, you know what I'm saying? But here's the real issue that I have here, my man. I think that Sean O'Malley being a sniper, being so methodical, he's not going to give Munhoz a bunch of those war-type scraps that he's been in recently to give him the opportunities. I think he's going to stick out a distance and only come in methodically and strategically right there. But if Munhoz can press the issue, if he can get into those clinch spots and do some dirty boxing, take away the kicks of Sean O'Malley, take away all the... Because he uses those long, like, push kicks to the, to the stomach, teep kicks and all that stuff. He uses all the different variety. If you can eliminate those and make it a boxing match, I think he might be able to have some success. But then again, is Pedro Munhoz a boxer? He has real deal power in those hands. He has power in those hands, brother. So if he connects with Sean O'Malley, can he do this? This is the real way that I see a victory happening that would be very definitive, that I think a lot of people are underestimating Pedro Munhoz. Drop good old Sean O'Malley. The best takedown in the game is a good old left hook, right? Shout out to the Count, Mike Bisping. And then use that BJJ black belt, man, and then start going to work. Because that is in the realm of possibilities here. Maybe on the feet, he's outmatched. But take it to the ground. Take your opponent, take your big, scary opponent, make him horizontal. All that strength, all that scariness goes away. So what are the odds of something like that? I mean, Pedro Munhoz averages less than a takedown a fight.
Has O'Malley been dropped before? That's the stat I'm trying to look up right now. Has he? Do you know? Do you know off the top of your head?
We'll find out together. We'll actually go on to the UFC stats, and I'll pull it up for everybody to see here. So when I'm looking up Sean O'Malley, and let me just remove this really quickly. All right. So it looks like we'll look at knockdowns. Has Sean O'Malley ever been knocked down? And it looks like the answer is no. Right?
Yeah, I mean that's what I was expecting to see, because he does have the Marlon Vera loss from the ankle, but Sean O'Malley can grapple as well, man. He's gone against Gilbert Melendez, Hector Lombard, Takarani Gomi. Like he can grapple in there, but is his grapple the same as Pedro Munhoz? Probably not. So do I see a knockdown happening? Probably not. I mean, anything can happen, but I don't see it going that way. I mean, would you rather have power or would you rather have precision? I mean, the old saying goes, speed beats power, what's the saying? Speed beats power, power beats precision beats whatever. You know what I'm trying to say.
It's precision beats power and timing beats speed.
There we go. Thank you, Derick. I'm over here messing up. But I'd rather have the precision, the speed, the sniper of Sean O'Malley, because as much as he can get Pedro Munhoz can get the knockout with that one big shot or get the drop, drop him down one time. I see Sean O'Malley just putting a 3-piece combo to you, and next thing you know, you're looking up like, what in the fuck just happened? So, yeah, I don't know, man. It's big shoes for Sean O'Malley to come into and step, because I do agree. I agree with you that this is a big jump in competition. But would you say this is a big step in his career, overall? Because Sean O'Malley is one of the few fighters that is in firm control of his career. I think it's a little risky for him. He loses this fight to Pedro Munhoz. He takes a really big step back. But I don't see this one making him, if you know what I mean. What do you think?
I think it depends on how much you respect Pedro Munhoz, because I respect him a lot. Yeah, he's 1-4 in his last 5, right? And that's, I mean, optically, you look at the number and you're like, that's pretty damn bad. But if you look at 5 of the last 6 opponents he's had have all been current or former champions. We're talking about Dom Cruz, Jose Aldo, Frankie Edgar, Aljamain Sterling. We're talking about those types of cats. Cody Garbrandt, right? We're talking about those guys. So that's the part right there, man. It's like, okay, well, if you're fighting the top-notch opposition, well, what is a Sean O'Malley to you? And I'm not trying to be disrespectful in that sense. I do think that this will be the biggest win that will make Sean O'Malley, because if he loses, all we're going to be saying is, oh, Sean O'Malley, so you're not the guy, right? We thought you were the guy, but you're not the guy. 1-4, Pedro Munhoz, they're going to look at that and they're going to be like, oh, you couldn't beat that guy, even though people who don't respect Pedro Munhoz aren't fans of the UFC. They're not fans of MMA, because this is one of the best dudes to do it out there. But ultimately, man, the test is going to become, because Pedro Munhoz is so well-rounded, he could take the fight anywhere. If Sean O'Malley, if he can get a dominant, definitive win, if he can get a knockout against Pedro Munhoz, brother, that's going to be speaking volumes. Because guess what? Pedro Munhoz has never been finished, ever. I listed off all of those names, and Pedro Munhoz has never been finished. So for people to come in, oh, O'Malley's just going to knock him out, I'm just like, it's not that simple. It's just not that simple. And as much as I would like it to be, because I feel weird going all decisions here, you know what I mean? I can very well see Munhoz getting this fight to the ground, man, and submitting Sean O'Malley. I can see it. Or a TKO victory. I can see it. Is it likely? Maybe. Maybe we look back after the end of this fight and Pedro Munhoz did something outstanding nobody would have saw coming. But AJ, I do believe in the here and now and not the pride of 2010, of 2014, 2015. And Sean O'Malley clearly is a train rolling downhill right now, man. He's a force to be reckoned with. 15-1. He's coming off of 1, 2, 3 nasty knockout wins. I just don't see the knockout coming here, but I do see the win, brother. So I'm going to rock Sean O'Malley, and I'm going to go with that decision prop of plus 150 for Sean O'Malley. But I'll talk about the other props right here, brother. The over and under is 2.5 rounds. A TKO for Sean O'Malley, plus 160, brother. God damn, they're giving my guy everything. Plus 160 for a TKO. For Pedro Munhoz, plus 600 for a KO, which blows my goddamn mind. Plus 900 for a submission, blows my mind even more. And plus 500 for a decision. So they're giving Pedro Munhoz almost no shot to win, man. Do we capitalize here? Do you throw a little hedge on Munhoz? Or do you just go all in on O'Malley? What do you think?
Man, Derick, remember earlier in the show when I said the odds makers must know there must be something behind that? These dudes obviously don't know shit about Pedro Munhoz. That's kind of crazy, man. They're giving him nothing. You have to hedge your bets on that one. You have to put some money down on Pedro Munhoz, because that's how this dude's one of the greatest to do it in the division. I mean, obviously not the greatest, but if you look back, this dude has a who's who of people, and I was just actually looking at his record. He has a first round submission over Rob Font that goes completely unnoticed, completely unnoticed. Can that happen? Yeah. So either way, I'm rocking Sean O'Malley. I'm going decision is with you as well. I can see the finish happening, but I don't expect it. So I'm going Sean O'Malley by decision. But I'm throwing a little cash down on that Pedro Munhoz pick as well, man, because that's crazy.
What would it be? If you were going to pick on Pedro Munhoz, would you go money line plus 235? Would you go plus 600 TKO, plus 900 submission, or plus 500 decision?
Ooh, I'd probably go money line just to kind of hedge bets in both ways. Just be a little safer on that one, because as much as I can see the knockout, I can see the submission a little bit more. That's the kind of crazy thing. So I don't know if I'm between that. What'd you say the submission prop was again?
Plus 900, man. Almost plus 1,000, bro, for submission. And I'm like, bro, he has 8 submissions on his record. I mean, come on, But
I think you might need to throw some money down on that submission, because that's crazy, man. And he's good. And don't get me wrong, Sean O'Malley's a good grappler as well, but Pedro Munhoz is steps above, in my opinion. So you got to throw some money down right there.
So I know that was long-winded, folks, but I think there was some hypocrisy to be had in the eyes of the odds makers. But clearly, we're rocking with Sean O'Malley. Would I be surprised to see an upset? Absolutely not. And if the upset does happen, we think submission is probably how it's going to happen on behalf of Pedro Munhoz. Either way, that is your main card. That is UFC 276. But now, AJ, we have actually 2 pieces of business to get into before we get out of here. One, we actually never did a poster review, brother. So let's knock that out just really quickly. So we're just going to bring it up real fast, man. And I just want your opinion on it, brother. So for the folks who are still listening, we appreciate you. Sorry about the wait right here. Adesanya, Cannonier, looking mean, looking golden, looking nice. Adesanya, Holloway, the good old, I don't even know what you call it. Good bicep flex right there, brother. What are you seeing? What are you rating it? Talk to me, man.
Man, this is they really let us down with this one, Derick. They were throwing some heat before, but this is one of those ones. So if you put this poster on a wall of all the other posters that the UFC or anybody else has made. This one gets lost in the shuffle. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't get me wrong. I think the background's probably the coolest part about this whole thing. I like the gold. There's a couple double fights on there. The gradient of their names. That's pretty cool. Have we seen it before? Yeah. Will we see it again? Probably. Like I said, this one gets lost in the shuffle for me. This one's about a 5. What do you think?
Yeah, you know what, brother? The other part, too, is that if you notice, if you look closely, because I'm this type of guy, if you look at the way Israel Adesanya is holding his belt, and you look at the way that Volkanovski is holding their belt, their UFC is flipped one way and then flipped the other way, man. So I was like, we couldn't even get no symmetry going here, you know what I mean? Like, come on. How much are we planning? How much planning is getting put into this? Either way, I'd have to agree with you. I'm going to actually match you on that one. I've been going higher or below before. I'm going to go 5 on this one. Just wanted to knock this out. Nothing to write home about, but it is a poster, so we'll just leave that for what it's worth, man. And lastly here, AJ, brother, let's just talk about a couple of prelim fights real quick, man. And just so the good folks know at home, there's a couple other fights that they need to be tuned into as well. So we started off at the beginning, right? Jessica Rose Clark, that's your sleeper. Jessica I versus Macy Barber. I definitely think that that's a fight, folks, that you're going to want to tune into. AJ, the question today is Jessica I the gatekeeper who's going to prolong Macy Barber from being the future, or is Macy Barber, is she even the future at all, brother? Talk to me. What do you think?
It's looking like Jessica I is the gatekeeper, but at the same point, man, Macy Barber is as much hype as she walked into the UFC with. She's really fizzled out heavily. I almost made this one my sleeper because I feel like both of the fighters are going to experience so much pressure from this one. If Macy Barber loses, you know, like, it's like, oh wow, like you lost to Jessica I. There's no title shot coming in the next 3 years, 5 years, maybe, who knows. Jessica I, you lose this one, it's like, okay, now you're really relegated to the gatekeeper position. There's a lot on this fight, and I do think it'll be very exciting. But yeah, this one's an interesting one to see how he plays out, especially second fight of the night.
Yeah, absolutely. And folks, I will say for this next bout right here, Uriah Hall versus Andre Muniz. You need to watch this fight because, believe it or not, this is one fight, and I'm actually, I guess it's not going to pop up if I do it like that, but I'll tell you, this is one fight where Andre Muniz, a dude who a lot of people has not necessarily heard of, look, my man, you know, got to get taken care of over there. You know, well, this is one guy who a lot of people have not necessarily heard of, and Andre Muniz, who actually has a minus money submission prop to defeat Uriah Hall. I'm talking about, if we're looking at props right now, Andre Muniz for TKO plus 525 for a decision, plus 500 for a submission, minus 110 to submit Uriah Hall. I just wanted to put that out there, folks. So definitely be privy to that. Keep an eye out on that, and maybe even throw down some money if that's how you're feeling. But for the meantime, all right, AJ, there's a couple more fights. We got, like we said earlier, we got Ian Garry versus Gabe Green. Ian the future, Garry versus Gabe Green, a mean wrestling machine. I smell upset for Gabe Green, but if Ian Garry can get it done, man, then he's really showing it. Jim Miller versus Cowboy Cerrone, the rematch. Someone 16 has to go. One of these, I think they're tied for most fights in UFC history right now between the two. So whoever wins is going to be a leg up there, and whoever, you know, ultimately wins that, 16 losses apiece. 34-16 is Miller, 36-16 is Cerrone. We'll see what happens. But lastly, this is the fight you need to tune into. Brad Riddell versus Jalin Turner. You have the tarantula in Jalin Turner, Brad Quake Riddell. High level matchup right here to the utmost degree. And AJ, man, those are the fights that the people need to tune into. Which prelim fight are you most excited for aside from your sleeper?
Woo, probably that Brad Riddell, Jalin Turner, man. If Jalin Turner doesn't get a quick KO, it's going to be an absolute scrap against Brad Riddell. But at the same point, man, the Ian Garry, Gabe Green, that's not a fight to sleep on, man. Gabe Green is really good. So is Ian Garry, coming up with all the heat, expected to be the next, who are they calling? The next Connor? Yeah, Ian Garry's from Ireland. Maybe not exactly like Connor, but in Ireland, coming to scrap, always a fun time.
Absolutely, and I don't want you folks to forget, look at the discrepancy. 5'7" is Riddell, 6'3" for Turner, 71-inch reach for Riddell, 77 for Turner. So that's going to be something definitely to keep your eye on. I will say, though, man, like, this is the ABC right here. This is big-time fight card. You have to tune into this one. This is going to be important, and we're going to have a lot to talk about come Monday for the post-show. But until then, folks, drop a like, subscribe, get us up to that 400 subscriber mark. We appreciate you. And then check us out on TikTok, man. That's a platform that I know it's Gen Z, and I make fun of it because I feel like an old man hopping on there or whatnot, like it's not for me, but this generates a lot of growth for a lot of people who want to check out quick fight clips or whatever the case may be. All of our content is up there, man, so check it out. AJ, you got any last words for the people?
Man, I'm kind of blown away. We do have a TikTok, man.
Yeah.
So I'll go check it out. There's all kinds of socials going around. So whatever you want, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, we're shared on every single platform. And to all the people that have been following lately, the 400, we're going to get there soon enough. And we'll always remember the people that have rocking with us since day one. We appreciate the love and the support. It's going to be a fun fight night, folks. You got to tune in, man. It's going to be a great one.
And check the leaderboard. AJ's up 4 picks right now. We'll see how that ends come the end of Saturday night, folks. That's it for us. Until next time, folks. Peace.